You know that feeling when you're texting someone late at night and it's around 2 o'clock in the morning and you know the next day you're going to be so screwed for school or for work and you know you're going to wake up feeling so tired, but you just can't help it. You're giggling away, you're chatting with this other person, the texts are bouncing, the conversations are flowing. Well, that was the situation for Hadley Monroe. She had met this boy through Tinder, but they had actually been texting for a couple of months and they were finally planning on meeting up. This is all the way back on May 10th, 2022 in Bountiful, Utah. And it's a pretty safe and family-oriented suburb. There isn't really much that goes on there. It's a small town, everyone knows everyone type thing. It does have really nice hiking trails though. So Hadley and the guy she was texting thought, yeah, let's meet up face to face for the first time after talking for several months and let's go on a hike. Since they were both from Bountiful and they kind of both knew the way around. Now it was actually the guy's idea to go hiking, but she didn't really think much of it. I mean, yeah, Bountiful is known for their nice trails. It's going to be a nice couple of days this next week. It is May, so it's nearly summertime. So they decide to finally meet up after months of texting. So on that day of May 10th, 2022, they decide to meet up in the middle of the day. Now, a couple hours of later on that day of May 10th, there is a group of people who are mostly composed of nurses and doctors who decided just to also go camping since it was a really nice day. They were kind of in the same area that Hadley was going to go for a hike, relatively nearby. But these groups don't know each other. They're completely separate and independent from one another. They're just having a regular day, camping, enjoying the weather, having a couple of beers. So like, how's your week been type thing. Then all of a sudden they hear like rustling in the bushes behind them. I'm like, oh, what is that? Is it an animal? They turn around, they look like nothing really comes out. And then suddenly a girl just comes out of the bushes and she's out of breath. She's panting and she's covered in what looks like blood from head to toe, and she's stumbling towards them. Please help me, guys. Please help me. I need help. And she's trembling. She's clearly badly injured. It seems like she had suffered from some stab wounds all over her body. The fact that she's even standing, let alone speaking, has shocked the entire group of people who were just there having a normal beer on what was supposed to be a pretty nice casual day. Of course, they immediately go over to help her and they immediately call 911. Now, luckily, a lot of these people who are there are healthcare workers, so they very quickly attended to Hadley's injuries without any idea as to what happened to her. Who could have done this? What happened? Are you okay? And all she said was that she had been attacked by someone that she was hanging out with. Now, very quickly, this girl is brought to the hospital, and when the detectives arrive, the first thing that they do after she had been taken care of is ask her a couple of questions, while the situation is still fresh in her mind. Do you know who did this to you? Where did this happen? How did this happen? All the standard questions. And she remembers everything. Sometimes when you go through a really traumatic event, sometimes your memory is a bit hazy. You can't remember all the details. Perhaps you even black out and you just don't know anything about what happened. But not for Hadley. She knew everything. She told them who he was, what his name was, where he was from, what school he went to, what they were doing that day. They had planned to go on a hike and they were just going to have a picnic. They had been talking for months. Surely she knew him. She would always have these late night texts and phone calls with him. She even showed them the Tinder profile and all of the text messages. And they realized, okay, she knows her attacker, but then they realized that he's actually still out there. Now, what really happened that day to Hadley? Earlier that afternoon on May 10th, Hadley and the guy she had been speaking to on Tinder for a couple of months decided to meet at Mueller Park, which is in Bountiful, Utah, where they're both from. And this place is a wooded canyon and it's really known for its quiet trails, but it also has limited cell service because, of course, you're out in the wilderness. You're probably not going to have a lot of access to 4G. But that aside, they thought the weather's really nice. It could be a really nice day to have a picnic, Hadley was thinking to herself. They did arrive separately to the location, but when they met up, they just clicked and they were chatting and chatting for hours. They hiked for hours, they talked, they ate, they spent a lot of time together for a couple of hours. Everything was normal. Hadley was thinking to herself like, wow, this date is actually going really, really well. I'm having a really nice time. It kind of just felt normal like it did when they were texting online. It felt the exact same in real life and there was just no red flags that were pointing out to her. After they had been hiking for a while, Hadley decided, okay, I'm getting kind of tired now. This has been a really nice date, but but I think we should get back to the car. And the boy agreed, yeah, okay, let's go. So they walk back and they're enjoying the conversations, looking up into the sky. It's a really sunny and nice day today. Hadley's thinking, maybe what am I gonna have for dinner later? When they get to his car, the mood kind of shifts and nothing happens. There's no fight, there's no escalation, but there's just like this shift in the air. You know, that sort of tension that you can feel and you can tell like something is different now. Something has changed, but I don't know what or who or why. And that's what Hadley began to notice. All of these everyday normal thoughts that she was having, what she was going to do later, like what she was going to eat for dinner, that was all out of the window now. And now she took note of the fact that the guy that she had been spending hours with, there's just something off about him. They get into the car, and as they're sitting there, all of a sudden, he pulls out a knife and he just gets on top of her and starts stabbing at her. And this takes her back. She has to act immediately. Wait, what? They've just spent hours, a whole day together talking and eating, and now suddenly he has a knife and he is trying to stab her. He aims for her neck, her face, and she's trying to block. She's trying to fight back. She's not giving up. Hadley is thinking, I'm not going down like this. So she puts up a really good fight. She was able to grab the blade with her hand to stop him, but of course it injures her during the process. And as they were in this sort of back and forth scuffle while she was trying to fight back as he was trying to stab her, all he said was, your blood is making this knife really slippery. Eventually, this went on for a couple of minutes and she was able to break free and she got out of the car and bolted. She ran away. As she was running, all she was thinking to herself was, I just need to create as much distance as I can from me and this guy who is chasing me and who just pulled a knife onto me for no reason. The adrenaline was intense. Her heart was pounding in her chest. And when she turned back, all she saw was just him standing there. He did try to chase after her a little bit, but then he seemed like he just kind of gave up and he was just standing there staring at her. And as she looked back, she noticed that he was covered in blood, covered in her blood. Now, this is when Hadley reached the campsite and she was able to get some help from these people who were there having just a regular camping day. And Hadley survived. And she didn't survive because those people were there to help her. Of course, that was great and that really increased her chances of survival. But she saved herself as she was the one who fought back and she decided not to give up at any moment. As the detectives are talking to Hadley as she lays in that hospital bed, they now have enough information. They know who the suspect is. They know his name. They know everything about him. Hadley gave over all the information. They know his physical description, what he looks like, the weapon that he had used. But the only thing is that they don't know where he is right now. They could go back and check at the park, but by that time, he's probably gone and he went somewhere else. They don't know if he's trying to leave the country. Maybe he's gone back home. And most of all, they have no idea if he plans to attack again. On that same day, there was this woman named Gail. She's a 64-year-old woman, and she was outside of a wedding venue in Bountiful. It was a really nice day to have a wedding. She was just enjoying her time, having a drink, talking to some friends, when all of a sudden she sees this young-looking boy approaching her. And she has no idea who this guy is. They don't know each other, but he's walking towards her with this look on his face as if he has a goal in mind. He's clearly going for something. He wants something, but we don't know what. She has no idea. And all of a sudden, without warning, out of nowhere, he pulls out that same knife that he used to attack Hadley and started stabbing this woman repeatedly anywhere that he could. And she fights back. She screams, she gets the attention. Keep in mind, this is happening in the middle of the day. So this is not like late at night where there isn't really a lot of people around. Gail is sat right outside of a wedding venue that is filled with a lot of people. So this young boy who decided to attack her out of nowhere for no reason, unprovoked, is fully aware of the fact that there are people watching this happen. And as Gail tries to fight back and she tries to cover her body and her vital parts, witnesses do rush in and eventually intervene and put some distance between Gail and this young crazy guy who has a knife on him. And among the group of witnesses who came to aid Gail was 2 nurses and 1 EMT. So thankfully, she was also very fortunate to have people there to help her straight away. and to attend to her injuries. When the witnesses come in between Gail and this young man, they physically block the attacker to prevent him from continuing the assault. And this is a bit of a risk that they are taking as well. They don't know this person, and if perhaps this act will provoke him further, if maybe he will go after them with the knife, but he just decided, it seems in his head, it wasn't worth it. So he just walked away. As if nothing happened, he just walked away from the situation. Gail was then transported to the hospital in critical condition with life-threatening injuries, including a collapsed lung, but luckily she was able to survive. Now, this young boy, after attacking this elderly woman for seemingly no reason whatsoever, he walks away and heads down the street. He doesn't know where he's going or what he's going towards. He's just walking. When all of a sudden, another person that also doesn't know this young man, unknown, comes and basically corners him into a bar. This is the same guy who witnessed the attack and followed this young boy to make sure he wasn't going to hurt anybody else, and tracked him to a nearby bar, and he held him there until police arrived. These people who decided to step in and help these two women who were attacked by this young boy, big applause to them. It's not every day in our world that you will see people step in to help. You would think it's like a common thing to do or like the bare minimum, but I think oftentimes a lot of people don't want to get in harm's way at risk of, also getting hurt themselves. So in this situation, I'm very glad to see that these people were able to help, and it eventually did help their chances of surviving this attack. Now, when the officers arrive to the bar, they arrest Kane pretty much immediately, and he does not resist whatsoever. He lets them put him in cuffs, and he's smiling throughout this whole time. Like, ear to ear smiling while he's being arrested. Okay, just have that visual in your head. Like, how twisted and eerie is that? And his entire body, his clothes and his shoes are all completely covered in blood. Once the attacker was arrested, they brought him in for questioning, and they were able to identify the suspect as Kane Fairbank. He was 18 years old, recently graduated from high school, and he was a local resident living with his family. There was really nothing that unusual about him. However, he was known to have been struggling with a lot of mental health issues leading up to the attack. It seemed that Kane was struggling with a lot of intrusive, violent thoughts, and he did, prior to all of this, have contact with mental health providers. His family as well was aware of his psychological difficulties. But since he turned 18 and Utah has laws stating that police cannot publicly disclose juvenile records, it's pretty unclear to us whether or not he had a prior criminal record and to the extent of his mental health interventions. However, it is made aware that he was really fixated on violence for an extended period of time. So even though on the outside he seemed like a seemingly normal 18-year-old who just graduated high school and was just on Tinder, to find a girl or to find friends, like whatever teenagers do at that age, on the inside, he had darker intentions, and he wasn't just scrolling Tinder just to meet up with a girl. He was actively looking for someone to hurt, and unfortunately, it ended up being Hadley. Now, when they spoke to Kane, he admitted quite a lot of things to the officers. He didn't really shy away from the details. He told them that the attack was fun. To him, it was an activity, some sort of thing that he did that entertained him, and he said he wanted to kill vulnerable people, which was why he attacked that elderly woman, Gail, for no reason. In his mind, he thought that she would be a pretty easy target, but little did he know that she would fight back and defend herself. And eventually, he wasn't even successful in killing anybody. Thank God, though. He did plan the hiking location. It was very intentional for him and Hadley to meet up at that secluded area because he knew it was isolated. There was limited cell service. He was aware of all of that. It was very intentional. So, ladies, even though sometimes we think, we'll meet up with someone we're chatting with, let's meet in a public space. Public doesn't always mean that it's safe, so always just be careful and keep your wits about you. He also told the officers that he should have picked a sharper knife. When he was asked if there was anything that he regretted, anything that he would change about the situation, that was the only thing he said in response. So clearly he has no remorse. He has no sympathy for his actions, and he pretty much admitted straight up that he he was only talking to Hadley online specifically to lure her somewhere secluded and kill her. So this wasn't like he was talking to this girl and then something inside of him just triggered or snapped out of nowhere. Like he had planned this for quite some time. After his confession and interrogation, that is when the officers went over to his home. They had a search warrant and they searched the premises to find more evidence. And they found various amounts of knives that had belonged to Cain. They found a lot of electronic devices that had a ton of digital evidence, paper trail and whatnot. And there was just a ton of searches about killing and violent crime, like past things that have happened and all of these research that he was looking into about serial killers. It seems like he was very interested in all of this, and he actually was having conversations with multiple women online. So it wasn't just Hadley that he was speaking to. He was talking to a lot of different women at once, trying to meet up with all of these women. And luckily, though, they did find that there was no other victims linked to him. However, he was talking to all of these women. It was just very unfortunate that Hadley ended up being the one to go and meet him. Now, detectives did conclude from all of this that there was a clear pattern and that this was not just a spontaneous attack. And it seemed that his violent thoughts were also being further intensified by the act of going online and talking to these women. It seemed to only fuel his desire to kill them even further. Now, before this case could go to trial, he needed to be evaluated psychologically to determine his mental state and whether he was competent enough to stand trial. So prosecutors in Davis County, they charged Cain with 2 counts of attempted murder plus felony charges related to aggravated assault and weapon use. And at this point, Cain is legally an adult. He is 18 years old. So the case was going to proceed in adult court. Now, multiple mental health experts did agree that he was suffering from some sort of serious mental illness. He did have a history of mental illness, but his mental illness wasn't enough to justify his actions and his impulse control. It seemed like he had planned this out. He made clear choices, so the court ruled him as competent to stand trial. Now, details of this case are a little bit hazy in some areas, as this was quite a small local attack. However, we know that the trial happened in 2024 and Cain did plead guilty but mentally ill, and he had claimed that he was actually affected by an extreme episode of schizoaffective disorder, and that is basically a chronic mental health condition that combines symptoms of schizophrenia, which include, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking with a major mood disorder, so depression or mania. And you can have a long list of psychotic symptoms that you're showing without the mood symptoms. And he claimed that he had this disorder. So his case actually did avoid trial, but he was ensured a prison sentence with access to mental health treatment. So this case didn't actually end up going to trial, even though originally they did determine that he was mentally competent enough to stand trial, but it seems like it never actually proceeded in that direction. So he was charged with attempted aggravated murder and reduced count of attempted murder. So these are both first-degree felonies. Now, a lot of us here, we watch true crime, and if you're familiar with our channel, you've probably heard these charges before. But in case you don't know what that means, attempted aggravated murder is when a person intended to commit aggravated murder, which can include things like killing during another felony, torture, having multiple victims. So this is quite severe, and it means that this person took a substantial step towards completing these things, but the victim survived. So Cain tried to kill his victims, but luckily they were able to survive and they fought back. So that is why he was also charged with reduced count of attempted murder. He did receive 15 years to life plus 3 years to life, and he will be spending the rest of his days in prison, and he won't be coming out anytime soon. Now, authorities later said as well, after all of this, that both of these women survived because they actively fought back during the attack. Unfortunately for Hadley, this situation had long-lasting mental scars and physical trauma to her body. She's scared to walk alone now. She's constantly aware of how exposed she is and how vulnerable she feels whenever she's out in public or walking on her own. And she will, for the rest of her life, have a lot of physical injuries and mental scarring to deal with. And unfortunately, this case is not independent to Hadley and the other elderly woman who was attacked. A lot of women, unfortunately, go through these situations. And what we have to keep in mind for ourselves is that we have to defend ourselves and we have to fight back when needed, because that is the only reason they came out of this as survivors. Hadley's hand is now permanently injured from nerve and tendon damage because she grabbed the blade during the attack to try and stop it. Now, Hadley said that she has a tattoo that she designed herself that she has on her body, which is an illustration of a hand grabbing a knife. And she said, "I put it on my body forever to understand that's something I overcame. In a way, I'm happy it was me," she says, because according to him, me fighting back deterred him. What did you guys think about today's case? Leave any thoughts that you have in the comments section below. I feel like this case hits a little close to home for me. Seeing these women come out as survivors from this brutal attack, it's honestly inspiring in some ways to see their resilience and determination. And it's a gentle reminder for us that we shouldn't give up so easily, because we definitely have it in us to fight back when we need to. And I think it's kind of nice for once that we have a story on this channel where the victims actually come out on top. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video and for taking the time to learn about today's case. If you found this video informative, don't forget to leave a like, a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.